Welcome to the latest episode of 305 Vox Populi. I'm Mayor Manny Cid. And with us today, we have DJ EFN. How you doing, DJ?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on, man. So we want to break the ice by asking something that we ask most of our guests. You know, what's your why? When did that passion, when did that love of music come into your life? When did you say, you know, I'm going to be DJ EFN? You know, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's a loaded question because I could probably spend a couple of days talking about the why. But if I was to condense it, I'd say it's a young kid growing up in the 80s, late 80s, loving music in general. And then hip hop is starting to come through the airwaves on, you know, got the boombox, break dancing, doing all this stuff, and realizing this is like the music of my generation. Because I was a fan of the music, just music in general, and a fan of people like, you know, if you watched the movie and there was like a time era of like the Vietnam era, you had this kind of music, and, you know, the Sinatra era, you know, that. So I was like, man, this is the music, you know, I realized this is the music of our generation. And I just was like, I got to get in on this somehow. And then it started as just being the ultimate fan and supporting, and then realizing it's at its infancy locally, to the point where I was like, I got to get involved, and we got to do our part to support the local scene and contribute to the local scene.
And when did you know that this was something sustainable forever, right? Because I think sometimes people have passions, or I got a friend of mine who was a DJ back in the days. A lot of people know him. He ended up becoming the head of the Miami-Dade Police Department, right? So he worked at Power 96, did a bunch of stuff, and he was like, man, I couldn't do this long term. I don't know. I didn't know how to monetize that and change my life for the rest, you know, forever. So when was that moment where you were like, this is forever, this can work forever, it's sustainable?
I mean, I don't think there's really that, you know, if you're in the arts, it's really a question mark. You know, if you got to go into it just realizing you may not make a dime off of this. And it really was a pure hustle from the beginning. What I did is, my crew, we had numbers when we started my company and my crew. And so I said, look, guys, we don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of means. So we need to collect. We had to come together and kind of unionize ourselves and say, we got the numbers. So I try to make us disciplined to the point where it's like we paid dues every month. We all had to put in our work to maintain this crew and this brand. And then slowly we were able to finance projects, little less make any revenue. And it wasn't until, you know, just finding different branches of this tree, which is, I started a marketing company, I started managing artists, started a record pool, I started making mixtapes. You know, we had an independent record label, we had a clothing store. So what I did is I tried to find all the branches that we can grow from this tree that were relatable to the mission statement of the crew, and then take it from there. And that's how we started to find, you know, the ways to make revenue.
We're taking a quick break to thank our sponsors. We're powered by Miami Lakes Automall. You met Fred Senner out there. Really cool guy, humble, but he's one of the big dogs in the automotive world.
I could tell.
He gave the seed money to start this podcast. They're located at 16600 Northwest 57th Avenue, Miami Lakes, 305-455-3510. EFN, man, when you walked into this office, what did you think of the mural?
Oh, dope. Everything in this office is dope. Like the mural here, but outside, seeing those pictures of Machu Picchu and all the different artwork you have, it's inspiring. And I brought you a fellow Dade County worker there. It's a teacher. I brought a teacher there too.
Oh yeah,
Socrates awesome. The Great is a teacher there.
So real cool. This was made by a Miami-Dade County public school counselor. She's a school counselor during the day, and at night she painted this. Grisel Gajano. You can reach her at 763-553-8608. Did you all have any pastelitos yet?
No, but we'll get some.
All right. Shout out to the KO family. Vicky. Yeah, they're Miami Lakes residents, good friends. Shout out to Vicky Bakery, 13925 Northwest 67th Avenue, 305-384-1334. And then shout out to our next sponsor, Enrique. Have you had him on Drink Champ?
No.
You got to get him on Drink Champ. So we had him on the show when we first started, and we didn't have a roadcaster. So he sent Harold out. He goes, hey, go to Sam Ash, which actually it's closing now, and bring back these folks roadcaster. So he's the one that paid for that.
Same piece of equipment we have.
Yeah, good man. Shout out to Enrique. And what makes this really cool, this podcast, it's a live classroom. So everything that we film today, Albert goes back, Brent gives it to the students in a raw format, and then he teaches them how to edit it, how to work on the audio, how to work on the different tickers on the bottom. They have to then upload on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, and then they work on various phases. But they've also evolved from just a podcast now. They're the envy of Northwest State because they have a whole film crew that films their sports games live. They have reporters on the sidelines. They have dope. ESPN tickers. I mean, you name it. So, and they started off with just an idea. Now they're 120
and
students.
What age group are these students? What is it?
It's high school students.
That's dope. Real life experience. That's
different ages.
Immeasurable.
Yeah. So then last semester we actually, and they're fixing the studio. We would film some of the episodes at St. Thomas. So they would bring the high school students over, and we'll probably do it in the future as well. And it was an actual class at St. Thomas for an entire year where kids could sign up, and we would have the classes would get jam packed, and it was a college credit.
Wow, that's
media
dope.
production, but it was in the podcast. So yeah, we're gonna take it back over there. We'll let you know when we do.
Yeah, let's go. I'm down.
Yeah, we appreciate you all. So DJ, part of the hustle, right? People see you now and they're like, man, he made it, right? He's on with Nori every day, doing Drink Champs, which is one of the top podcasts in the world. Super entertaining, super awesome.
Thank you.
But folks don't understand the grind, right? Like you even had an era where you were doing that underground radio station, right? That pirate radio. Talk to us about that era, because I remember it. I remember calling in as a kid, and you would love finding the pirate station wherever they were at that day and listening in, because you guys had amazing music, right? You would cut those commercials, and that was phenomenal. But give folks, especially those kids that are going to be editing this and the other folks watching this, a glimpse of that era.
Well, this is hip hop in the sense that you gotta, out of necessity, you create things. So pirate radio was a necessity specifically in South Florida because we didn't have hip hop playing regularly on commercial radio. So pirate radio was vital to our hip hop community back then. And the same reason why I got into doing mixtapes. So it was just me as a DJ trying to find all the avenues that I can support and contribute to the scene. I was like, okay, this is it. We're not on commercial radio, so we're gonna do pirate radio. And any opportunity that came to me, I was a part of several. I don't even remember all the different pirate radio stations, but I was involved in one that was in Homestead, one, a couple of in Northwest, one that was in downtown. One time I was a station that was in an apartment that was right below Mix 96 where Khaled made his chops. So we were kind of like rival pirate radio stations, and we literally can go outside the balcony and like talk crap to each other. So that was just a vital part of the community, because without that, we wouldn't have had hip hop playing on the radio. And those stations, and I got to give props to WVUM, which is a UM state. They had a hip hop show that was vital, and FIU eventually followed suit and did one as well. But and also the community. What's the community station out here? The public radio.
Oh, the one that gets run by the school board?
Yeah, because we had the Rhythm Rocker. Well, I forget the
WLRN.
Yeah, so we had the Rhythm Rocker, and we had their show that was vital to our community as well. So this is all of us playing our roles, and pirate radio was a big part of that for us, because it got the information out. This is pre-internet era, so it's flyers and pirate radio getting this information out, where the shows are at, where the parties are at, what the new music coming out is. People, it's hard to fathom today an era without internet telling you everything, but these are the things that we had to do back then. It was out of necessity, which is everything that hip hop was birthed off of necessity.
No, you're absolutely right, and I used to love that era, man. Just tuning in. So who was that first artist that gave you a chance, a shot as a DJ that you can look back and think? Like, I'll give you an example. There was a local kid here in Hialeah that went to Goldman. I remember when The Game took him on tour. I think it's DJ Chris Styles back then, and there were a bunch of different folks that got their start similar to us. So who was that first person that helped take your name to that national scene?
I mean, well, there's a lot of local artists that I worked with, but I would say on that national scale, it was Nori, and that's why we have the relationship we have today. I was already doing my mixtapes. I had a store called Crazy Goods on Bird Road and 137th Avenue, and I had a 4-track in that store where I would have artists come through and drop freestyles for my mixtapes. And if anybody knows anything about the mixtape culture, getting a freestyle from a known artist for a mixtape is huge, especially for a local mixtape DJ like myself. So my boy, shout out to Phil the Mayor, who ended up he became a big promoter and was a part of Live on Sundays and all that. He brought Nori, who Nori was doing a promo run for the Capone Noriega album when it dropped. But he was doing it by himself because Capone was in prison at the time. And back then, again, pre-internet promo days, you had to do in-stores. If you were coming into a market and you were going to do an event, you would go to retail stores or other stores to show face and get the word out that you were in town. So he brought Nori to my store. I had my 4-track ready. He dropped some freestyles. I was already a fan of what he was doing. I mean, I loved Capone Noriega, and then the fact that Nori had the Latino component and me being Latino, I was like, I was already a big fan of his. He dropped a bunch of freestyles for me, which was legendary, and then we just hit it off. His crew hit it off with my crew, and we maintained that connection. He was on almost every single mixtape after that, and he was blowing up at the time. So for him to be consistent with me, that just amplified what I was doing on a national scale, where now other artists are like, oh, Nori's on the mixtape? I got to get on the mixtape. And I'm getting freestyles from this person and that person and this person. It really accelerated a lot.
And what's interesting is you were born in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So similar, has the LA culture ever...
it's a part of my DNA for sure.
Yeah, you think like the Be Real. So Be Real is Cuban dude, right?
Yeah, I'm from the same area, Cuban, from Southgate. My family lived in Southgate. We still own property in Southgate.
Yeah?
And yeah.
So where do you see that West Coast style in your music, in your mix?
I think for me personally, as a hip hop head, having that LA connection allowed me to look at hip hop less regionally, where a lot of what was happening at the time in South Florida was a lot of New York transplants. So therefore, the narrative for what hip hop needed to sound like was strictly New York. And if it didn't sound like that, it was like it wasn't really going. And my taste was a little broader. I brought the LA taste, and then not just the LA, but I think just having that kind of lineage allowed me to look at the whole nation. Like, to me, if it was dope hip hop, if it was dope, it was dope. I didn't look at where you were from. And then it allowed me to also see what we needed to do regionally for ourselves. Like, listen, man, we need to prove ourselves. We just need to be dope. We just need to be consistent and put Miami on the map, and also create our own identity. Because that was the other thing too, is like we had a lot of New York transplants that was like creating our identity, kind of like shadowing New York. We needed to like break out of that by having, making sure we had our own lingo. We talked about our area, that, a lot of things. And one of the people that was very inspirational for me early on, before I'm really getting heavy into doing this as a career, is this artist named Mother Superior. And I talk about her a lot because she came out with a song called Rock Bottom, putting on for Miami. And it was just the skills, the production, everything that you wanted out of hip hop at that time. But she put in that Miami flavor. And that was so inspirational for me because it showed that it could be done. Because a lot of people in the hip hop scene at that time were saying, you can't, be a lyrical artist, or you can't be skilled and be from the South. That doesn't exist in the South. And that was inspirational, and that was the lane that I wanted, and that's what I wanted from Miami. So she was just huge for me.
You're the third person that's mentioned Mother Superior, so you'd say like she pretty much started Miami hip hop.
She didn't start it, but she's just a big part of it, and she was one of the first artists from. See, I can only speak from my generation because I've talked to older heads than me. They're like, hey, well, Miami hip hop has this other, time frame that we were doing A, B, and C, in the 80s or whatever. This is like late 80s, early 90s, really is the era that I'm talking about. But she was one of the first artists from that era to get a major record deal, which was a big deal coming out of Miami, right? And she's getting a major record deal repping Miami as her like main song. So that's huge. And then she leaves, she moves to New York, and then she ends up getting shelved by the label. Long story short, her album never drops. My opinion is, had her album dropped, the landscape of Miami's hip hop would have changed. Like today would have been a little bit different. Maybe a little bit more lyrical. Maybe the sound would have been a little bit different. But had she dropped with the push of the record label at that era, look, she had Redman on her album. She had KRS-One repping Miami on her album. She had production from all the people that were doing all the stuff back then. Plus, she had producers from Miami. She had artists from Miami. She had the GZA, if I'm not wrong, it was the GZA direct her first music video. This is when the Wu-Tang just going crazy. And it was like his first directorial debut, you know, for the song with Redman. Like, it was bananas. Had her album really, really gotten pushed out there and come out at the scale of everybody at that time, it might be a different landscape of sound for us out here.
You know what's interesting, and I had Brimstone on, and he didn't agree with me, but Harry Wayne Casey, who's a good friend of mine, lives literally right down the street. He tells me that his music influenced hip hop at a different. I don't know how you feel about that. He felt that he opened up doors for the hip hop game overall because he says disco.
I can agree to that as a DJ. Disco, has a huge part in hip hop's story. I wouldn't say solely because of that, but you know, it's the disco era that you know has especially if you follow the history of hip hop, it's those disco DJs. We just had Grandmaster Flash on Drink Champs, and he credits the disco DJs showing him how he needed to be as a DJ, like what he needed to do, the skills he needed to have, and it was those disco clubs that eventually like turned into hip hop clubs. And you know, I wouldn't say it was solely disco that did that, because there's a lot of elements, a lot of things going on. And that's what we forget about when we talk about hip hop today, is the culture of hip hop, which has a bunch of different elements to it. It's not just the musical component, although that's one of the main pieces, but it's not the only component.
So you touched upon Drink Champs. Talk to us about what your day looks like, or why did Drink Champs even start? Because I know you brought some merch. I got some Drink Champs merch. We were walking around Miami Lakes with this, but more importantly, I got your merch, man, which is your brand.
Which is all mine. You know, we're all, you know, Crazy Hood, Drink Champs. It's all
the same. Got it. So why Drink Champs?
So, again, I'm going to try to condense a long story for you. So, Nori, he moves. I'm going to give you the story of Drink Champs, first of all. Nori, he ended up putting out a reggaeton album, which I don't think he gets enough credit for being one of the pioneers in reggaeton coming to the United States. So he puts out a reggaeton album. He had the song Oye Mi Canto with Daddy Yankee.
I remember that song.
And when he kind of talked to me about doing reggaeton, I thought it was a joke because I was not into reggaeton. As a Latino in hip hop, I'm a diehard hip hop head, you know, trying to make sure that Latinos are respected in hip hop. So when he did, I'm like, what are you doing, man? I thought it was a joke. But he put it out, and you know, he pioneered that space. But hip hop, the English market, turned their back a little bit on him. And he decided he wanted to change the scenery, so he moved to Miami. He actually moved to be close to my studio. He moved to Kendall. He was in the hammocks for a bit, and he was working out of my studio every day. I opened up the studio. I was like, whatever you want to do it. And he told me, bring me back to hip hop, because he knew I was like a diehard hip hop head. So let's do it, man. So we started recording freestyles and sending them to Flex in New York, and we started working on music. And in that time frame, we get an opportunity from a friend of ours called Leo G, who he had a station on XM radio before the merger of Sirius XM, and he offered us to do a weekly show that we could record at my studio and send it in, which was kind of unheard of for them. You had to be in their studios, like in DC, I think they were at the time. So he gave us that opportunity, and we started doing it, and we ended up doing a show for about 3 years after the merger. It was Sirius XM. We were on different stations, Hip Hop Nation and 66 Raw, and different ones. And it was a weekly show that we did, and it looks and sounds just like Drink Champs. Just had less guests because we're in South Miami and Kendall. Nobody was coming down there to check us at the time. We're drinking. We're saying make some noise. We're introducing ourselves the same way, same antics. So we're getting like what I like to say, our sea legs in this space. At the same time, me and my crew, we were big drinkers, man. You know, I'm not advocating for people to drink, but this is what we did. We drank in the studio. We drank at the events.
Over 21.
Over 21. Kids, don't do this at home, please. And so if you couldn't handle your liquor, we would say you're not a drink champ. And we were hashtagging Drink Champ and Drink Champs going back way before the podcast, me and my crew. So I like the ring of that name, that term. So I looked it up at the .com. I said, this is available. So I bought drinkchamp.com and drinkchamps.com, the plural. And then I got the Instagram when it was available. Then I got the Twitter when it was available, and the Facebook. I didn't know what it was going to be. I just said, I like the way this sounds. It could be a clothing brand. It could be a bar. It could be anything. Table that. Me and Nori are still doing our show. He ends up going on tour with Capone to Europe. I'm managing a local group called Mayday that gets signed to Tech Nine, Strange Music, one of the biggest indies in the country, and we go on tour. So me and Nori are both busy. Stopped doing this show that we weren't making a dime doing the Sirius XM show. We were just doing it for fun. Then I have another friend who's in Kendall, who's in the Podcast Hall of Fame, who's advocating, and his podcast is Gamertag Radio. He still does it. His name is Godfrey. He's always advocating to me, yo, you should start a podcast. That thing you did with Nori, do it as a podcast. I'm like, okay. Thought about it. He's like, look, you don't have no time limit. You could turn in whenever you want. It could be 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 hours, whatever you want. That sounds, promising. So I tell Nori. He didn't know what a podcast really was. He's like, Tell Nori again. Then when he finally kind of knows, he's like, isn't that like nerdy computer stuff? I'm like, kind of, but it's a new space. So it takes me a couple of years to talk him into it. And then we're getting hit up now by other entities who start podcasting. Rest in peace to Combat Jack, who's a pioneer in the hip hop podcast space. He hits up Nori, says, hey, that thing you did with EFN, you should do it as a podcast. So Nori considers it, puts him on the phone with me. We talk about it. Nori's still not ready. Long story short, years pass by. Nori finally starts getting on board. He does a podcast called Tax Season with host Taxstone. I feel like he sees himself in this podcaster, and he's like, yeah, he's like, I think I'm ready to really let's do it now. My boy Godfrey just got a deal with CBS Radio. He said, hey, you want me to make the connection? I said, please. I tell Nori's like, CBS sounds amazing, sounds big. Let's do it. CBS says do some pilot episodes for us. We record Kenny Anderson first. Now I have an office in the Viscane building in downtown. I had an apartment as an office. I already had a station set up there because I was doing Dash Radio at the time, a show called OG Radio. So I had all the podcasting equipment ready. So we did Kenny Anderson, and then the next day we had Fat Joe on. Right, these are the two pilots. We sent that in. CBS, they loved it. And I also, big part of the story is a good friend of mine, a Miami-Dade native, Carroll City, Scam. He's an incredible artist. Did artwork for the Slim Shady LP. Did the cover for Beats Rhyme and Life for Tribe Called Quest. The D12 stuff. Tons of other artwork. Also has a song with Eminem, which is referred to in the song Stan. When they said, I even got that you got with Scam. Scam's from Carroll City. Homie of mine. Been on my mixtapes. I already looked at him legendary, but we became close friends. He did a lot of artwork for my crew. I said, could you do a logo for me? He does that incredible logo, which I think is iconic at this point. And so when CBS says, let's do it, I tell Nori, let's call it Drink Champs. And Nori, when he's ready to go, he's ready to go. And he's like, yeah, because he named our other show, which is Militam and Crazy Radio. He named that one. So I said, I want to try and name this one. And then I told him Drink Champs. I said, look, I got the logo, I got the handles, I got the .coms. Let's do it. Let's go. And then we put out, the first one we ended up putting out was the Fat Joe episode, and it broke records out the gate, and it was a hit. Out the gate, we caught lightning in a bottle is what I like to tell people.
Man, that's phenomenal. So looking back, reminiscing a little bit, because we're so busy in our daily lives, and I'm sure you're swamped. Sometimes we never get to sit down and just look back and be like, wow, the journey has been amazing. So from those days where you were getting into the game, the pirate radio, mixtapes, and now you got literally an amazing platform. I mean, literally, like I watch it all the time. I mean, Drink Champs is amazing. Just looking back a little bit, reminiscing, how does it feel?
It feels great because the original mission statement for myself and my crew was just to support and contribute to our local scene and help put Miami on the hip hop map. So to be able to do that and go further than that, and now, like my biggest pride is to say, when people say, oh, you Drink Champs is in New York, filmed in New York, or it's from New York. No, it was conceived in Miami and it's filmed in Miami, and half of the co-host is from Miami as well. So that's one of my biggest, prideful things to say. And so not only did we put on for the city, but we were taking it, nationally and internationally, where I've traveled internationally and people know about Drink Champs and love Drink Champs, and it's become a part of the culture, which is more than I ever expected to be able to do, because just to take you even further back, when I'm telling my boys in high school, I want to start this company called Crazy Hood Productions, and try to do hip hop out of Miami, everybody laughed. You know, most people laughed when I told them, because they're like, you're in Kendall. First of all, Miami's nowhere on the hip hop map, and you're in Kendall. Like, we got no connections. We don't got no money. Like, what? Like, this is a crazy dream. Like, you don't got no connections to nothing. And I'm like, well, we're gonna figure it out. So to be able to do that and go this far is crazy. And if it ended tomorrow, that's fine. We've done more than we even thought we could do.
It's amazing, man. What a ride. And I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg. You got a long ways to go, man. So kudos to you. I'm going to hand it over to Albert, the team, Drew, and Ozzy in the back. You guys got any questions for DJ?
Yeah, what do you do to wind down, decompress, you know, because you're a busy person, you know?
I mean, look, for me right now in my life, I waited a long time to have kids on purpose, because this was my priority, was this career of mine and this culture. And then I finally, settled down and had kids. I got 2 young ones right now. And that is my priority, and that is, how I wind down, is just I'm a family man. That's my wife. My wife gets a little annoyed because she would want to have a beer or two sometimes, or have a drink with me, and now it's like drinking is work, and it's like, oh man, but I gotta do drink champs tomorrow, or I did drink champs. She's like, God damn, drink champs, man. Like, I want to hang out with my husband and get lit. You know what I'm saying? Like, so but just being home and being with the kids and the family, that's a wind down. Or hanging out, really, man, I love hanging out with my crew and my boys, and for us to just sit back and have some drinks casually, not like drink champs drinks, but hang out and be able to talk about the journey and reminisce and see how far we've gone. I love to do that with the boys. I love all the war stories that we could talk about and say we're still here. And luckily, everybody in my crew, we're still together. We're still intact, and we're still, working.
That's awesome. Albert?
You as a DJ, what's your biggest challenge dealing with people requesting you songs and stuff like that?
Well, luckily, I don't DJ like that anymore. I was the DJ that didn't really, make the move to digital too crazy. I got sponsored by Tractor, Native Instruments, and all of that. But once it got digital, I opted out. It just wasn't for me. I never wanted to be someone's jukebox. That's why I got opportunities to go into commercial radio at one point, but I didn't want program directors telling me what to do. I'm from the pirate radio mixtape era, like, you can't tell me. I'm my own program director. I'm the one that calls the shots. I'm from the era where the DJ dictates to you what's dope. Whether that's right or wrong, but that's the era I'm from. Like, if the DJ played it on the dance floor, you may not have ever heard it, but you're like, oh, the DJ's playing it. This is dope. So I just never made that jump. So I didn't continue to DJ, and I just paid my dues early on. I was spinning at clubs, pirate radio, the mixtapes. I even devoted myself into the UM radio station without going to UM. I took my turntables to UM and was the DJ for the station for a while. And everybody's like, you don't go here, man. You're not supposed to be DJing here. But so I mean, yeah, luckily I don't have to deal with that, man. But shout out to all the DJs out there that have to deal with people asking for records, because that's the most annoying thing you can do to a DJ in a booth.
Look, we got a special guest in the back. Ozzy used to be one of the top promoters in South Florida, club promoters in South Florida in the late 90s, early 2000s. So what do you got for EFN?
What really inspired you to become a DJ? Because I know when you're a kid, obviously you play sports in Miami, everybody's into, the football, baseball, or want to become a doctor or want to become a firefighter. But what really inspired you to become a DJ?
I mean, to me, the DJ is the pinnacle, and the backbone of hip hop. So when I was finally, watching the music videos or going to the skating ring, like going to Hot Wheels, the DJ playing, like to see that this person controlled your energy, controlled the energy of an audience and people, I was like, man, this is crazy. Manipulate. I love music, so someone could manipulate the music. This is wild. He's a magician. He or she's a magician. Like, it's crazy. So that's what I wanted to be. And unfortunately, I didn't have the money to get turntables early on. So I did this thing where we call it pause tapes. I get 2 tape decks, stereo tape decks. And I would like make mixtapes, like using the pitch and stopping and pausing and doing all this stuff, or recording off the radio or whatever. And that was my early turntables for me. But yeah, man, just seeing those early videos and seeing the DJ, I looked past the MC always. I was like, that's the dude right there. Like, look at this, you know, like the Jazzy Jeffs and the Dr. Dre's and Terminator X and those, like that was, you know, those were the people that inspired me. Kid Capri, shout out to Kid Capri.
Kid Capri. You guys got anything?
Hey, out of all the artists you had on Drink Champ, who was your favorite and why?
There's a lot of favorites.
Put you on the spot.
No, I always default to my earliest favorite, which was 50 Cent. I didn't have a relationship with 50 Cent. Nori did, obviously, so I didn't know what to expect from 50 coming in. I heard he doesn't drink. We were filming in Little Haiti at the time. He came through by himself, walked in, greeted everybody in the room. He's a master marketer, so that day he was drinking shots. He doesn't drink, but he was drinking shots because he had his liquor to promote. And he got pretty tipsy. And he this is early on Drink Champs where people were like unsure of coming on the show. They didn't understand the drinking. You know, remember in hip hop media, being on camera is weird. Like, you know, we kind of like, you don't want to talk too much. You don't want to drink and talk. So like our era, I wish I took pictures and video back. I barely have any proof of what I really did when I was in the grind, you know, like paying dues, because that was just, you don't film yourself. You just don't do that. So people were a little bit worried about doing that, and they'd come on the show and they'd be apprehensive and look at me and Nori like, what's really going on here? But 50, he understood it from the onset and he had fun with it. He took some shots. He stood up, talked to the audience, you know, our crew, and he just had a lot of fun with it. And he was just a pleasure to be around. And so that really stood out always as one of my favorite episodes.
That's awesome, man. So we turn it over to you. You get to ask us 2 questions, me, our team, anything you want. It's dangerous because you're on that side of the microphone always. So what do you got?
Well, what's the music that you listen to when you're relaxing, and like, is it hip hop? And if it is, what name some artists?
Man, no joke. Yesterday, I went for a run yesterday. I did a 3-mile run, and I was jamming out to all the old school Lil Wayne and Baby, Manny Fresh, Juvenile.
Okay.
So I was in the New Orleans groove yesterday, but all the old school T-double-D's, all that old school Miami stuff. Uncle Al, when you all mentioned Uncle Al, was
rest in peace, Uncle Al.
Rest in peace, man. It's super legendary. All the house parties that we went to as kids in Hialeah, it was all Uncle Al. Some Uncle Luke, but mainly Uncle Al back then. But yeah, like yesterday, it was all about the New Orleans era.
Right.
So yeah, I try to mix it up. I'm a big Kygo fan. I like the hot when I want to relax more.
Right.
Which is completely different. But yeah, and I always go back to the Miami stuff, man. The old school T-double-D.
What's your earliest hip hop memory growing up here?
So I couldn't have. We were those kids from Hialeah, Miami Lakes, especially Hialeah, that we couldn't afford to go to the real clubs, right? We just didn't have the money. It was you get the OE and then maybe find a house party, but that was it. And maybe have $1.99 to go to Denny's on 49th Street. But our clubs were the Ramada Inn on 49th Street back then. They used to open up their ballroom and host local clubs, and Pitt used to sing, used to rap there. For the Pitbull, that was one of the first times that I started like, wow, you know, this Miami hip hop, you know, and I was back then. I was in Pitt's first video. You know, I was an extra dancing.
In which one?
Welcome to Miami, the one under Jose Marti Park under the highway.
Yeah.
Because he had no money either, right? He was just starting off, and he invited all of us. But back then, he would rap at all, and his rap is completely different back then than what it is today. Like he definitely made a big change, but that was it for us, you know, listening to the Pitch back then, and then just going to all those house parties in Hialeah. That was all. It was all the old school, you know, Uncle Al, Uncle Luke, but mainly in person was that Pitt experience, which was at the Ramada. It was all these kids like me who couldn't afford it, and Pitt opened himself up, man. It was an awesome era. And then back in the days, there used to be a club right here in Miami Lakes called Mad Jack's. That's when
I remember. Yeah.
DJ Khaled, which you had mentioned earlier, he used to stand in the middle of the street on 67th trying to get everybody in. Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah.
You come in? Yeah.
He
Free
definitely was
tickets.
doing that. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember rolling in there, but man, we were those kids who couldn't afford it, so we would go wherever, man. And that's Pitt back then was rapping wherever, and that's where we first. And that was the early 2000s. I graduated high school 02, and back then
It made me feel old right now.
Yeah.
Graduated in 93.
Yeah, 02. But yeah, man. And then the Trick Daddy, I think doesn't get enough props because there was an era there where Trick blew up nationally, you know, and I don't think he gets enough props. I still remember he filmed Take It to the House at Northwestern. And I was playing at Pace at the time, and we had a summer league game at Northwestern where when they had Winsome Frazier, who was in the video. I think he was on the video dunking, and they would play it while we were warming up, and it was like, man, you would walk in the West, and it was super intimidating because of what just happened there with his
Trick is. I always say, like, what I love about hip hop is the authenticity in it when it's real, right? And Trick is that for Miami. I often say he's like the Jay-Z of Miami. I love Trick, man. I love Trick.
But yeah,
he's dope.
I don't think he gets enough credit or has got enough credit throughout his career for what.
Well, we gave it to him at Drink Champs.
That is true.
And he's been in there, and he's hilarious. If you got to watch those episodes, he is a comedian. He is hilarious.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Good dude, man. Good dude. Shout out to TWD. But in closing, any words of inspiration, motivation to that next DJ EFN who's in Kendall right now, who's feeling the same way? He's like, man, I want to break through the music game, and just some words of inspiration for those kids that are going to be watching.
I mean, I would just say that just like how myself, like I said, it didn't seem like there was a direct path to what I was going to do, but I had a passion, and that passion kind of led the path for me. I would say lead with passion, you know, like that's highly important, but a lot of people would say, well, that's all you need is just passion. You need to show up. You need to be persistent and consistent. And one thing that it took me a while to figure out that I've utilized over the years is this thing that I like to call polite persistence. Especially when you're building your network and you're trying to get these amazing connections that are vital to your success, because you need a network of people to help. You're not going to do it on your own. And what happens is everybody in this world is busy. Everybody's got their own lives. Everybody's doing their own things. So they're not always available to you. And you can't be offended by that. And it took me a while because I came up, you know, like I'm a gangster my way through stuff. I had a crew of like 20 guys. We're going to gangster our way through stuff. But you create enemies that way and animosity towards you. And luckily, I learned like that's not the way. Polite persistence, you approach people, you're polite about it, you're understanding that their time is valuable, and you just keep hitting them up until you hear no. And if someone says no, then no is no, and then you find another creative way. But until they say no, that door's cracked open. So just be polite about it and keep at them. Keep at them, keep showing up, and keep doing what you're doing so that they see when they finally show up, you didn't just stop and wait. You've been doing what you got to do. And that's some advice there for you.
No, but I love that. Polite persistence. I think we all learned something today. That's something I learned. I've never heard that phrase. I'm going to start using that going forward if you're cool with it.
Absolutely.
All right.
I don't trademark it.
So the incredibly inspiring story behind DJ EFN. Make sure you tune in next Wednesday on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X.
Yeah.